So when you order food on an app, have you ever really thought about what's happening behind the scenes? It's not just about getting your pizza delivered. Every tap, every click is creating a huge amount of data. Today, we're going to use our FIC company Hungry Now as a playground to decode what that data actually is and why understanding it is absolutely crucial. Let's get into it.
Okay, picture this. It is peak time on a Saturday night. The Hungry Now app is going crazy. Orders are just flying in, drivers are all over the city, restaurants are pushing out food as fast as they can. Every single one of those actions, a customer tapping order, a driver's GPS pinging a new location, a restaurant marking a meal as ready, yeah, that's creating an absolute mountain of data.
So that leads to the big question for any data technician, right? What kind of data is all this? Is it all the same? And, the real reason we're here, why does knowing the difference matter so much for passing your endpoint assessment, your EPA?
Well, that is exactly what we're going to figure out. So let's start by decoding the main categories of data that you really have to know. First up is structured data. Now, you can think of this as the super organized, neat freak of the data world. It's all the information that fits perfectly and tidily into rows and columns, like in a spreadsheet or a big database. It's consistent, it's predictable, and honestly, it's pretty easy to work with. And here is exactly what that looks like for Hungry Now. This is a classic orders table right from their system. See how every single row is one unique order, and each column holds a very specific piece of information: the order ID, the cost, the delivery time. And that level of organization is what lets you ask simple questions like, hey, what was our total revenue last night? And get a perfectly clear answer just like that.
Okay, now let's jump to the complete opposite end of the spectrum: unstructured data. This is the messy, creative, free-form stuff. It has no predefined model, so there's no way it's going to fit into those nice, neat rows and columns. We're talking about things like customer emails, posts on social media, photos of the food, or even those voice notes drivers might leave.
A customer review like this, it's a perfect example. And honestly, it is pure gold. It's unstructured, for sure, but it is packed with incredibly valuable information, sentiment, context that you would never ever find in a simple table. Now, to get the meaning out of this, you need some special tools, things like natural language processing. So, what's in the middle of these two extremes? Well, that would be semi-structured data. It's not as rigid and strict as a database table, but it's not a complete free-for-all either. It uses these things called tags or keys to create a sort of hierarchy and organize the data. So it has some structure, but it also has a lot more flexibility. Here we go, a perfect example. This is a little snippet of JSON. This is probably what the Hungry Now app's backend sends to your phone when it gives you an order update. You can see those little organizing tags, right? Order ID, status. It's got structure, but the actual content inside could vary a lot from one update to the next. Okay, so we've got our main categories: structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. But here's the key, and this is really important. They don't exist in separate worlds. To get the full picture, the real story of what's happening at Hungry Now, you have to understand how they all work together. And that brings us to another really important distinction: qualitative versus quantitative data. Now, quantitative data, that's all about numbers and things you can measure, like the average delivery time is 27 minutes. Simple. But qualitative data is descriptive. It tells you the story behind the numbers, like a driver saying, I'm running late because of a traffic jam on the main road. See? The number tells you what happened, the description tells you why. You need both to get the whole story. And if we zoom in even further, we find the basic building blocks of all this data. You've got your numbers, like integers for a restaurant ID, or floats for a really precise cost, like 21 pounds and 50 pence. You've got strings, which is just a fancy way of saying text, for things like customer names and addresses. And you can even have compound types, like a single field that holds an entire list of all the menu items from one order. All right, so that's all the theory. But how does this all translate into you absolutely acing your endpoint assessment? This is where we get practical and put this knowledge into practice.
Think about it. In your professional discussion, they're going to ask you to talk about the data from your own projects. Were you dealing with structured order data or maybe unstructured customer feedback? And then in the scenario demonstration, they're going to give you some data and ask, okay, what would you do with this? This is your moment to really show you know your stuff.
So here is your game plan. It's a simple 4-step process. Step 1. The second you see data, identify its type. Is it structured, unstructured, semi-structured? Step 2, based on that, you choose the right kind of storage for it. Step 3, you select the right tools to actually analyze it. And step 4, this is the most important part, you have to confidently explain why you made those choices.
An assessor might hit you with a question that sounds just like this. And look, it's not a trick question. They're testing if you can connect the dots. The answer is all about understanding what we just talked about. Orders, that's structured data. It's perfect for the neat rows and columns of a relational database. But customer images, those are unstructured files. They're just blobs of data. You'd keep them in something called blob storage, which is literally designed to just hold these big individual files. All right, let's do a super quick recap to lock this in. Structured data lives in neat tables. Unstructured data is that messy but really valuable stuff, like customer reviews. Semi-structured is that flexible middle ground, like a JSON file. And always remember, quantitative data gives you the hard numbers, while qualitative data gives you the story behind them. So here's the bottom line. All of this data, from Hungry Now and from your own projects, it is telling a story. And by understanding its language, its type, its structure, you can finally start to understand what that story is. Your data is talking. The only question left is, are you ready to listen?